650 years before the Prophet came, before the Quran existed, you have millions or thousands and thousands of Christians believing and dying a martyr's death that Jesus was crucified on the cross and it was Jesus.
If Josephus called Jesus the Christ, is that Josephus writing or a Christian?
That would have been a Christian.
Right, so that's not Josephus, right? Is Josephus said a man called Jesus was crucified? That could be Josephus, yeah?
Could be, yeah.
Right. What was the name of the rebel leader? Barabbas.
Yeah.
What was his first name?
I don't know. I can't remember. Go on.
Jesus. That's the question, all right? Okay. Because you believe that it's the word of God and that he was writing eyewitness testimony and all these things, and I don't know where you get this notion from. I'm going to verify this. No, you told me, this is what you said to me, and it's on camera. You said the Eastern Orthodox Church took the Gospel of Matthew, spoke to eyewitnesses to verify it.
No.
That's what you said.
No, I never said that.
Yes, you did.
No, I never.
Yes, you did.
Listening.
All right. So why?
All
right. So why did the Eastern Orthodox Church accept the Gospel of Matthew as authentic then?
Because the Eastern Orthodox Church, the original Christians after the resurrection, they went in the houses, they were speaking and they were talking, and there was oral tradition. They could see what happened and they spoke. From there, Matthew put his gospel, inspired through God, and wrote down Matthew's gospel.
Right. Do you accept?
Within the Apostolic Church, the Holy Catholic Church. Not Roman Catholic Church, Holy Catholic Apostolic.
All right. Do you accept one thing?
Do you understand that point?
I don't.
What don't you understand?
So now I understand what you're saying. You're saying Matthew was part of the Eastern Orthodox Church, yeah?
Apostolic Church. Yes, the Apostolic Church.
Yeah. Is this the church in Jerusalem?
Yes.
So Matthew was part of this church?
Yeah.
Right, so that needs verifying, first of all. And the second thing is...
We don't need verifying because it's passed
you made a claim.
down. Yeah, because it's passed down through the bishops.
So what? A lie can be passed down.
It's like, just like you have Isnad. Just like you got Isnad.
A lie can be passed down.
1 minute, just like you got Isnad.
Yeah.
And things are passed down.
Yeah.
How you interpret
lies can be passed down.
How you interpret
Do we have fabricated... Okay, listen. Do we have fabricated hadith? No. Because what I'm saying to you is this. We have... Listen. We have... Because I'm trying to explain something to you. We have fabricated hadith, which are lies.
Are they slippers?
Come on, man.
We have fabricated hadith, which are lies, which have been passed down. But they're lies.
Oh, they've been lying about the Quran, yeah?
No, we have, listen to what I'm saying to you. We have fabricated hadith, which are lies.
Yeah, so
right.
So you have hadith that lie about the Quran. Answer me, yes or no? Do you have...
No.
I don't understand.
Okay, I'll explain to you. You seem to think because somebody passes something down over time, it must be true.
No.
Yes, you just said. That was your claim.
Like Isnad, they can check the families, they know the eyewitnesses, they speak to the eyewitnesses.
Where'd you get this information from? Where'd you get this information from?
And everyone has the oral tradition.
Who told... All right.
It's passed down.
Who told you that happened?
Because it's passed down to the church, the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church.
Who told you that they went into the houses and they spoke to witnesses and did all this stuff?
The Bible. And it's good.
It's in the Bible, it's in the New Testament, and you've also...
It's in the where?
Sorry?
It's in the New Testament?
Yeah.
The upper room.
That's in the Gospels, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're testing the veracity of the Gospels, though. So you can't use them as your evidence, can you?
To make it easier...
You've got to validate them first.
To make it easier for you, may I ask you...
No, but you accept that one principle first. Just because something is passed down over history doesn't make it true.
It does, because...
It does make it true.
Because, no doubt, there was a lot of...
Are you saying a lie can't be passed down in history? It's true.
No, what I'm saying is, a lie can be passed down, but it depends on the circumstance. Like the church, there was a lot of criticisms, there's a lot of attacks on the church.
No, let's apply the principle.
And there was no claim.
No, let's apply the principle.
There was no claim. See, I got to answer you, but
No, because I'll tell you why. I don't need you to go specific. I'm asking a principle here. Are you saying, because something is passed down over history, that makes it true?
It depends.
Oh, it does depend now.
Yes.
Right. So on what would make it depend? So, because I see what I'm saying here. Because, listen, I'll explain to you. Because it's been passed down over history that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Well, you reject that?
Yes.
Right. So therefore, just because something is passed down over history doesn't make it true, does it?
It does. Let me tell you why.
Well, it doesn't.
But let me tell you.
How can it?
Can I tell you?
You've got to be logical in this conversation, George.
Yeah, I'll give you examples. For example,
No, you can't.
the church, you've got eyewitnesses. We have the eyewitnesses.
We have eyewitnesses of Muhammad.
Yes, but the eyewitness of Muhammad, like for example, the miracles or anything like this, were there eyewitnesses there?
Yeah, we have eyewitnesses, yes.
Like where, for example? Do you know what?
In the hadith, yes. Passed down over history.
We're talking about the
Passed down over history.
We're talking about Quran.
No, we're talking about hadith.
Well, I'm talking about the Quran.
Well, the Quran's got nothing to do with the life of Muhammad.
Yeah, but I'm talking, well, the Quran mentions Muhammad, doesn't it?
Nothing about his life.
Well, did it say that, for example, let me give you one example.
Go on.
So we're going off a bit. Do you know in, is it the Dome of the Rock? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Didn't he do a miracle? He went up.
Yeah, he took him there. Huh?
The horse.
Right.
Was there eyewitnesses there? Was there eyewitnesses there?
No, but God told us that.
No, there was no eyewitness. But every miracle Jesus performed, there were eyewitnesses there. And it talks about the places and where and the archaeology there. And it's all proven.
Who told you this?
It's all in the book.
Josephus.
Who told you all these things are proven to be true?
Forget about Christians, independent.
Which independents?
Independent Jewish historians.
Which ones? Which ones?
Tacitus.
What did Tacitus say? What did Josephus say?
Oh, you need to do your research. I'm not. He'll have a look, but I'm not going to talk this up. But this answer.
It's good you brought up Josephus. You know that. I'm going to use him. Go on.
Because anyway.
Because you bring him as a witness, I'm going to bring him as a witness.
Remember what I said though, yeah.
Babylonian Talmud.
You promised me I want to ask one question, which is on my chair.
No.
When you're ready. When you're ready, you'll let me ask.
When you reach your illogical stance, and you're standing on a false assumption, irregardless, and expose your delusion, I don't mind. Yeah, then we can do it. It's no problem.
So that's a condescending language because you're assuming I'm delusional.
No, what's a delusional mean?
All right.
What does delusional mean?
That I'm misguided.
No.
What does it mean then?
It means believing something that's been proven not to be true.
Yeah.
And you still believe it's true.
That, right?
No. I said if. I said if.
As a Christian, you're not required to believe in the Quran. As a Muslim, he's required to believe in the Injil, the Torah, and the Zabur. So could you provide your evidence for any of those three when they ever existed?
That's a reasonable
Any evidence? Give us any evidence.
But before we
that's more pathetic than your original question.
Yeah. Can we be nice?
Let's see.
Let's be nice and respectful.
He hasn't got it.
Please, look.
No, let me continue on my route.
And then when you're ready, you'll let me ask you a question I want to ask, yeah?
Right. So we're on the Gospel of
Matthew.
I'm going to make my claim then. I'm going to throw my nuts and bolts out. I'm going to throw my nuts and bolts out.
No, eyewitnesses around oral tradition around.
Matthew.
1 minute. They're there.
All right.
They pass it down. This is what happened. Independent witnesses, independent historians, independent Jewish historians. They never said.
Which Jewish historian?
Matthew didn't exist.
Which Jewish historian?
And all these.
Which Jewish historian?
Wait a minute. Let me finish what I want to say.
They believe in Matthew, but it's corrupted.
Let me finish.
Believe in Matthew. They've actually said they believe in the Gospels, but they're corrupted. Were they corrupted or uncorrupted before the
and have you produced one?
You're meant to believe.
And why are you making the claim if you can't produce the original?
Have you read the Quran?
Most of it, yeah.
What does it say about the Gospels? What does it say about the people of the book and their book?
Tell him rather than
No, because he's read it.
Yeah, let's get it.
He's read it. Tell me what the Quran says about the previous scriptures and what happened to them. All right.
No, my question to you on this one,
I'd love to.
on this subject, what proof would you want to know that it's true?
What's that?
What proof would you want that the book, say, the Gospel of Matthew is reliable? What proof?
Who, me?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with me.
No, you're asking me a question.
No,
I know what proof.
I didn't ask you I didn't ask that. I said, why'd you believe it?
No, you said to me, how do you know it's reliable, yeah? How do you know it's Gospel of Matthew is reliable?
No.
I'm asking you then, after 2,000 years, what kind of proof would you need to satisfy you that Matthew is reliable?
Matthew was never disputed. Never disputed.
Don't tell me, tell him. And look at his face, him as well.
Okay. Understand one thing. Understand one thing.
No, answer my question, please.
I'm going to. Understand
What's my question?
You asked me what proof would I need to accept Matthew to be true. Okay.
Yeah.
Prove the Quran is false.
No.
Yes. That's the proof.
Well, we can.
Come on, man. But no, not now.
And this is why I wanted to come to my question.
Yeah, you can tell. No problem. That
what you
prove Muhammad. All you need to do is prove Muhammad sallallahu prove he lied, was crazy or deceived. All you need to do.
It'd be better if you gave him an answer.
That's all you need to do.
That's not right. I'm not happy with that answer.
Okay, first thing.
Questions need
okay. Are you listening to one second. All right, he asked me what proof I would require.
Yes.
I told him my proof. How was that a question?
Because you just said to him, tell him your answer again.
My answer again is all you need to do, the proof you need to present, is that prove to me that Muhammad was either deceived.
And that's an answer.
Yes.
You're telling him to prove something to you, and that's...
No, I'm giving him the criteria he's asked for.
No, he asked you a question, and you've asked him.
Did he ask for a criteria? Did he ask for a criteria?
Give him an answer instead of a question.
Did he ask for a criteria?
Normally a question requires an answer.
Did he ask for a criteria? What did he ask? What was his question asking for?
He said, why don't you believe in...
No, he didn't. He said, what would make you believe?
Yeah, what would make...
And what does that require? It's a criteria, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah? And does not me giving a criteria answer the question?
But you haven't given a reason why you don't believe in Matthew in that answer.
Okay, because Muhammad refutes what Matthew says. And Muhammad is my authority, not Matthew.
Exactly.
So you don't believe in Matthew. You don't believe in the Gospel of Matthew.
I don't believe the New Testament is a reliable source of information.
Do you believe it's correct?
Why? Okay, I'll tell you why.
Do you believe
One,
it
isn't written by eyewitnesses.
But do you see what happens?
Okay.
Yeah, you've done this.
We ask a question, he goes on to an answer which I'm not satisfied. You're not willing to discuss that, but you want to go back to
Yorgos. No disrespect. You asked me a question, I responded, then he butted in and changed the subject.
Joining in the conversation.
No, you're changing the subject.
Matthew.
No, I felt you didn't give credit to his...
I think you have a problem with comprehension, to be honest.
This is where, please,
well, it's not demonstrating
I'm asking you respectfully and nicely, in a humble way, yeah?
Right.
This point,
right.
yeah? And this is where we arrive at
right.
one question I want to ask you, which you keep not letting me ask you.
What's your question?
And that is this. You can pick, and we can be here all day talking about the Bible, and I could be there talking about the Quran respectfully and nicely, sincerely, and we can get in all sorts of arguments about this and debates. So what my question
I'm not going to let you ask
is
your question yet. One second.
No,
No, as long as you promise one thing. No. You have to make one promise to me.
No, I want to ask
Yorgos.
I want to
answer one question.
I want to ask one question. Your time is running out.
This is the one thing. I need you to do one thing and then I'll let you ask your question. Fair enough?
Okay, fair enough.
I want you to test my claim that I'm saying to you right now. And I'm going to collar you the next time I see you. All right?
Go on.
Were the authors of the Gospels disciples? Were the authors of the Gospels eyewitnesses? And is it inspired by God, and why do you believe so? Just those three things. That's the same thing, for God's sake. Right, so test those three things, because I'm telling you right now, Yorgos, your whole foundation of Christianity is based on these false assumptions. And once you realise, actually, according to what we're supposed to believe as Christians, the authors of the Gospels are anonymous. We don't know who wrote them. Names were put on them later. Yeah? And none of the authors of the Gospels claimed inspiration by a Holy Spirit. So why do I make that claim? Yeah? And no Gospel writer was there when Jesus was born. No Gospel writer was there when Jesus prayed alone and know what he said. So they weren't witnessing what they wrote.
Okay.
Right. So
have you finished?
Yeah. Are you going to answer those three questions next time?
I'll answer a bit now if you want to.
I was just thinking to myself, right? I've not had a cup of tea today. Because you're not a Muslim, you're a Christian.
Exactly.
Would you like my tea?
If I was a Christian,
would you like my tea?
I would get all the Muslims.
Would you like my tea?
No, thank you.
Are you sure? I've not had a cup of tea all day, and I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
I have.
No.
I knew it.
I'm going to answer a bit to the best of my ability, if you want me to now. Let me talk about it again later. Yeah? So your question is,
It wasn't a question, it was a claim.
Yeah, it's your claim that no, it's a statement. You're saying that they were...
Claim.
Yeah. So they weren't eyewitnesses.
They weren't disciples.
They weren't disciples.
No. They weren't disciples.
They weren't eyewitnesses.
They weren't eyewitnesses, nor were they inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Right. So these things, why is it wasn't claimed, what you're saying, at the time, even 600 years
after said what you just
after Christ? There's even the Arabs, when they were debating with the Christians, they never bring these up. In the manuscripts you see their debates, they never bring it up. Matthew wasn't Matthew, John, Mark, Luke, these were this and that, what you're claiming now. These criticisms come like 1800 years after.
Can I just say something to you? Do you know where these criticisms are from? Do you know where I get them from?
Yeah.
Christian scholars.
Yeah, well...
so it's not me, it's your people.
I don't know.
No, J.B. Phillips.
They're not my people. Christian scholars of today are not my people.
No?
I go through the holy tradition of the church.
Church fathers.
The Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, not Roman Catholic Church, but the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church of the first Christians who were alive at the time, all right, of when the resurrection happened, when the crucifixion and resurrection happened, and when they spoke and they spoke about these things, and it's been brought down through the lineage of the bishops throughout the monasteries of the church.
It's come out of the Gospels.
So, okay, but anyway, can we talk after, you said next week we'll have another chat about it?
Not next week, next time I'm here.
Let me ask my question.
Go on.
All right. Now, we tried to speak to this before, and I weren't quite satisfied. Now, my problem is this. Respectfully and nicely, I'm saying this. With the Quran, all right? Let's put it aside, because I could ask you questions about the Quran, and we get into debates. You interpret differently, I interpret differently. Oh, it's not Arabic. I should read the Arabic. Blah blah blah. And the same, you can talk about the Bible. Same, and we'll be here all day doing it. What I'm saying is,
do me a favour. Please stop telling me what you think I'm going to say. I don't like that. You don't know what I'm going to say.
I do know what you're
going
to say.
No, you don't. You might have a conversation with Muslims who said certain things. Have I said those things to you?
I listened to you.
Really? When did I talk about the Arabic to you? When have I ever mentioned it?
You haven't.
So why are you bringing it into the conversation as if I would?
Other people.
No, when have I ever said that to anyone?
The scripture, you are nothing until you uphold the Torah and the gospel and what has been revealed to you from the Lord. So show me your evidence for your Torah and your gospel.
Who's that talking to? Who's that talking to? Who's it talking to?
You tell me.
No, who's it talking to? Who's it talking to? No, who's it talking to?
I don't know.
Who's it addressing? Read it. You just said it. What does it say?
Oh, people of the scripture.
Right, stop. Is that talking to me or you?
I'm assuming it's talking to you.
No, it's talking to you.
Okay. So if you're in any doubt about that which has been revealed to you, then our folks have been reading the scriptures before you. Why would you do that?
It's talking to you.
If they held corrupt?
It's for you.
Okay. Indeed, we did send down the Torah, in which is guidance and light. There's a guidance and light in the Torah. There we got to now. There's a guidance and light.
Can I just address this very, very quickly? All right.
See what I mean? No. Can I forget that? You've been rude now. Can't you let me? What I was asking
sorry. Yeah.
No, because it looks like he said something profound.
Let me finish my question.
All right.
Don't you believe in the Injil and the Torah?
All right.
Do you believe in the Injil? He doesn't.
So what my problem is sincerely and genuinely is this. So let's put the Quran to the side. Let's put the Bible to the side.
He said that. He pulled out the Quran.
We mustn't talk about the Bible or the Quran.
All right. Can you say that to your wingman?
600. The Prophet came 650, 700 years after Christ, roughly. Roughly, yeah. Yeah, right. 650 years before the Prophet came, before the Quran existed. You have millions or thousands and thousands of Christians believing and dying a martyr's death that Jesus was crucified on the cross and it was Jesus, and claims with eyewitnesses his mother's there, his the disciples were there. Now, in the Quran, it says.
How do you know that? The Bible. You said you put the Bible aside. You just brought the Bible.
Yeah,
you just brought the Bible.
All right.
But you just brought the Bible.
Forget that. You Muslims believe, and yet you Muslims believe. Now, yeah, you're not going to mention the Quran or the Bible. I won't mention the Quran, Bob. You're right.
We just mentioned the Bible.
Yeah, I'm not mentioning that. Forget it. Forget that. Delete that.
So start again.
Yeah. So, why is it that you believe as a Muslim that was not? It was made to look like Jesus.
What was?
Jesus being on the cross crucified.
How do you know Jesus on the cross?
Because
the Quran says
the eyewitnesses.
Where did you get the eyewitness from? Where?
Oral tradition.
From where?
And the people that brought it down.
How do you know?
And they wrote it down. And
wrote
they
it down where?
The church.
Wrote it down where?
And the bishop and the
wrote it down where?
bishops passed it down in the church.
Wrote it down where?
We know that as fact.
Right.
And there were martyrs' death, and we know it from Roman writings. Right. We know it from independent historians that were alive at the time, not Christians. Let me finish. Not Bible. Don't know about the Bible. And they wrote down even, let me finish, please. The rabbinic manuscripts, even they said he was crucified, Jesus.
Yeah.
And yet, I've got to believe 650 years later, the Babylonian Talmud, thank you. And yet I've got to wait 650 years later to believe why someone's saying, oh, it was someone to look like Jesus. What makes you believe it? without mentioning the Quran or Bible.
Okay, I can't answer that question without mentioning the Quran.
You can't answer that question without
mentioning the Quran.
Mentioning the Quran.
No.
Exactly.
What do you mean exactly?
But I can believe and know it was Jesus that was crucified because of all the other evidence I've just said. And if you don't know what I've just said, rewind the camera.
No, I heard what you said. Well, let me ask you a question in response to that because I can't answer that question without
That's
God.
how rich the heritage.
No. It's very, very simple. It's very, very simple. Who would know what happened at the time of the crucifixion, apparent crucifixion? People who wrote about it, who claimed to witness it, or God?
God. Is it
all of them? God.
Who has more authority? God, right. So then how can you tell me? The only person I can ask about that situation then is who? God wasn't there, was I? Yeah, God. And what does God say about the situation?
I don't know. You tell me.
All your historians and your church and everything are all wrong.
That's what your God said to you, yeah?
That's what God says.
Julius Caesar exists.
How do you know that?
Never said he exists.
What did he speak to you?
Sorry? No, he said Jesus didn't die.
Yeah, who? No, he didn't speak to you?
No, it's in the Quran.
Who said we're not going to mention the Quran? You have to go to the Quran.
I said I can't answer the question without it.
All you can. God bless you. So all I'm saying is you have to go to the Quran.
Yes.
We don't need to go to the Bible for our belief.
Really?
The Eastern Orthodox don't even need to go to the Bible.
Show me the crucifixion.
We've got it all inherited in our church.
Where'd you get it from? Where'd you get the information from?
Go and ask the church.
What are you talking about?
Go and ask the church.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, who witnessed in the church Jesus' birth? Who witnessed it?
Well, do you reckon Joseph was there?
Can I kill your Josephus if you don't mind? You like Flavius Josephus, don't you?
Do you know who witnessed when you was born?
My mother and father. My mother and father.
Right, and then how did they know? How didn't they come out of the hospital? They spoke to the other people?
What are you on about?
Huh?
What are you on about?
Didn't they speak to other people and say, yeah, you was born, and blah, blah, blah?
Right.
So
the people they told, were they eyewitnesses?
Yeah.
No.
Witnesses there?
No. Right. Can I kill your Flavius Josephus? I really want to knock him out of the park. Because you think you have a Jewish historian who supports you.
All right, 1 minute.
Is that true? Is that true?
No, it was being tampered with. I agree with you.
No. Do you believe Flavius Josephus supports you?
Was tampered with.
What do you mean? Tampered how?
Some words were taken out to make it look like the benefit of the Christians. However, it doesn't mean
let's start again.
All them sentences.
For the benefit of the camera, who was Flavius Josephus and why would Christians present him to support the crucifixion?
A
Jewish historian.
Yeah.
And what did he say about the crucifixion?
I don't know, you tell me, I can't remember the exact words.
Okay, he referred to Jesus as the Christ.
Yeah. That was added in.
Right. So Josephus didn't write that?
I don't believe he did, no.
Right. So,
but what? Yeah,
all right, so first thing, we know it wasn't a Jew who wrote that.
Wait there. Right, stop there.
Go on.
This is very important.
Yeah.
There was a couple of sentences or something Josephus wrote about Jesus, yeah? It wasn't just one sentence. Do you agree?
What did he say?
There was a paragraph about Jesus.
What did he say?
No, do you agree there was more than just one word?
What did he say?
No, I'm asked you a question, answer and I'll answer you.
Okay, I'll explain to you then, because you're not going to explain it. Josephus wrote about...
I'm not explaining what I'm trying to explain.
Josephus spoke about a man called Jesus who was crucified.
Right. What else did he say?
What else? I don't know. What else did he say?
Exactly. I don't know either. But
right,
let me tell you.
Good. But let me tell you something.
He won't let me finish, man. I can't talk.
Well, I can't make my point.
No, what I want to say to you is, and then you can say your point. I know 100%, I can't remember exactly, I'm not a walking encyclopedia, but if you have a look at Josephus, there was more than just one sentence about Jesus.
Okay.
There was a couple of paragraphs about Jesus.
We've already said...
So there were some words that were tampered with, and you want to eliminate everything that Josephus said about Jesus, which you won't correct.
I'll say to you, if Josephus called Jesus the Christ, is that Josephus writing or a Christian?
That would have been a Christian.
Right, so that's not Josephus, right? Is Josephus said a man called Jesus was crucified? That could be Josephus, yeah?
Could be, yeah.
Right. What was the name of the rebel leader? Barabbas.
Yeah.
What was his first name?
I don't know. Jesus. I can't remember. Go on.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So, a Jewish historian writing about a rebel leader called Jesus being crucified proves nothing. That's the second thing. Third thing, what's the oldest manuscript of Josephus you have?
I don't know.
10th century. So the Quran predates Josephus.
Wait, okay, 1 minute. No.
Now, according to your principles, older in time is more authoritative.
You can't say because the Quran... Right, let me tell you. Shall I tell you what's wrong with what you've just said on all this?
Tell me what I've just said. That is wrong.
You can't say because the Quran manuscripts we have today predates Josephus manuscripts of today that the Quran was written before Josephus.
I can't.
No.
When was the Quran authored?
Because the
When was the Quran written?
Well, probably 750 AD.
And what's the oldest manuscripts we have?
Probably the Kufi.
And what are they? What year are they?
From the city of Kufa. Whatever. 700.
Alright, and when Josephus is oldest?
Am I right so far?
No, but anyway, continue.
Correct me.
No, I don't know the technical details, but the point here is this.
You don't know the technical details.
I don't need the technical details.
Right.
No, I'm just saying to you, 700 is not our oldest manuscript. No, I'm saying 700 is not our oldest manuscripts. That's what I'm saying to you.
What is it?
But it's irrelevant to the point.
Well, you don't know, do you?
No.
Exactly, so you can't say that. What my point is...
What's the oldest manuscripts we have? My God, do I need to find this?
And
do I need to?
There are in question.
Do me a favour, just for no other reason. No, what's the oldest manuscripts of the Quran we have? Topkapian? Yeah. When's that? No. What's it go back to?
Whatever it's called. It's the Kufic script.
The point here is this. Okay.
That's the one you have.
The point here is this.
And it's in Istanbul.
The point here is this.
And it's
the oldest manuscripts of Josephus is 10th century.
Yeah.
Right. So they come after the Quran.
No.
Yes.
Wait a minute. That manuscript of Josephus may be 10th century.
Yes.
But it could be a copy of a manuscript of Josephus. A copy.
Oh, it will be. It will be a copy.
Exactly.
But what's been changed?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So all you've got is 10th century.
Yes.
Right. So prior to that, you don't know what is said.
Yeah.
And you don't know if the Christians in the 10th century changed that.
No, we do know.
No, we know they changed it. Yeah, we know that.
Because we can see from other historians.
No, we can see that no Jew.
We can see other quotes.
No Jew would ever called Jesus a Messiah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I know about that.
So you'll bring in evidence from a corrupted text.
Correct.
To support you.
Yeah, that's right.
And what would happen in a court of law when you bring a corrupted text?
Well, it's used. Corrupted text is used. For example, can I tell you why? Or shall I give you an example?
Right. Anyway.
Well, why don't you let me give you an example?
Give me an example of corrupted text being used in a court of law as truth.
For example, you can get historical evidences out of corrupted texts. For example, you might have a manuscript talking about the Jubilee line underground in London. 2,000 years later, they read it. It's a corrupted. But it does mention Jubilee line, so we know this was written after the Jubilee line.
No, but you can't take everything.
We, Eastern Orthodox Church, can use certain texts.
Are you saying to me, if a manuscript was presented in a court of law, knowing it's been corrupted, you would take everything it says as true? No, of course not.
No, you won't. But you can pick evidences out of there.
If you can support them with circumstantial evidence,
if it cites a certain place.
But anyway, let me tell you one thing. But let me just finish my destruction of Matthew, if you don't mind. I am going to write the book. Don't worry.
No, you go too fast, and you've got to be slow.
I'll go slow.
No, please. For example,
quickly. King Herod.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Did I mention the 70? Like when there was
Matthew does.
No, when the Romans came and destroyed all of Jerusalem. Did I mention it?
I don't believe so.
When did that happen?
It would have been afterwards.
70 AD?
Something like that.
So obviously we know this must have been written, very high likely written before 70 AD.
It means nothing. We know they were written. It doesn't. It doesn't.
Of course it does. A major event like that, they're living there and they don't mention the...
Do you know what the biggest major event was in that time that only Matthew writes about? Two major events, actually. One major event is what? The crucifixion. When the dead come out of the earth, walking dead. Only Matthew mentions this. Is that not a major event?
So?
Did you Eastern Orthodox ask the witnesses?
No.
So you believe Matthew? All right.
Of course we will.
Right. Mark didn't. Okay, my point here is this: Matthew invents history. Right. One is, if walking dead. Look, if you think it's miraculous that Jesus rose from the dead, you should think it's amazing that all the people rose from the dead. Why not?
Jesus, we believe in God that He can do anything.
So what's so special about Jesus rising from the dead if all the people have already risen from the dead?
I'll tell you what. Because it was prophesied. It was prophesied.
What was prophesied?
Yes, from the Old Testament.
Where?
Daniel.
What's it say?
And in Isaiah.
What's it say?
You know, Daniel.
Oh, sorry. What
in
say?
Daniel,
what
for example, Daniel, he says when he's going to be born, how he's going to be born
in
from
Daniel?
a virgin. Yeah. It's 70, yeah, and it gives you
no,
when
you're quoting Isaiah. You're quoting Isaiah.
Jesus never had a control of that he's going to be born from a virgin. How did they know?
How do you know? Where does it prophesy he's going to be born from a virgin?
Daniel. Have a look at Daniel. Yeah, I've got that.
Isaiah.
Yeah, and in Daniel.
Anyway, I'm going to give you one thing, and I'm going to use your major Cephas if you don't mind. All right, listen. All right, in the Gospel of Matthew, it talks about King Herod, and it talks about how when Jesus was born,
it killed all the babies.
It killed all the babies. Yeah. All right, no one else writes about this in history except Matthew.
Yeah.
And then Jesus and Mary have to flee to Egypt, yeah, to escape this persecution. And then when King Herod dies, they return.
Yeah.
Right. Only Matthew records this event in history. Right. Now, here's the thing, you see. Why would Matthew create such a story? Yeah? Let's first establish, is it true or not? Well, you know your mate Josephus? He wrote a book called The Atrocities of King Herod. And he doesn't mention this. There's no mention of a census. So the man who is looking at King Herod and documenting all his crimes doesn't mention this.
Yeah.
Right? So the question needs to be asked, if the man who's looking at King Herod doesn't document this, and no one else in history mentions this, why has Matthew wrote it? And then we look at the conclusion. We see that Matthew is sending Jesus to Egypt. Then what happens? When Herod dies, Jesus returns.
Matthew didn't send Jesus to Egypt.
No, Matthew said, in his story he does.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then, I'm not saying Matthew said Jesus go to Egypt. In his story he did.
He went to Egypt.
Yeah, sent him in his story.
Yeah.
The narrative.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And then when King Herod died, he returned.
Yeah.
And then Matthew quotes the Old Testament in Hosea, where it says, as it was prophesied that I shall call my son from Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Now what's happened here now? Matthew has invented history, this idea that Herod did the census, when no one else mentions it. And then he's butchered the Old Testament, because the prophecy that he quotes from Hosea has got nothing to do with Son of God. It's to do with the children of Israel. It's completely out of context. So whoever authored the Gospel of Matthew, one, created history, two, butchered the Old Testament. Yeah? And why did he do this? Because he's speaking to a what? Jewish audience. Yeah? And why is it so important to have Jesus coming from Egypt and all of these things? And why is it important to have the census of the babies being killed for a Jewish audience? Because Deuteronomy 18:18 says what? We shall raise a prophet like you, like Moses. So the author of Matthew is speaking to a Jewish audience, and he's trying to imply that Jesus is the prophet like Moses, because he too came from Egypt. He too had the census done when he was a baby. Yeah? And this is what we call manipulation. Yeah? So two things happening. One, he's a liar, can't be believed. He's inventing history, and there's no way that inspired by the Holy Spirit, that lie. And if there is Holy Spirit inspiration, why is the Holy Spirit not correcting the lie?
Okay.
I don't want you to answer that now, because you can't do that now. You have to go and research what I've said to you. Alright, answer it then.
So, my response to you is this. Number one, did I interrupt you when you was talking?
No.
So,
good response.
This, what you said, is possible. We're talking, you're rational. You said you're rational, yes? So what you said is possible, what you said. But also, is it just possible? I'm only asking now, is it possible that they didn't write this, but Jesus did actually go, they took him, the baby Jesus, to Egypt? And is it possible that Herod did kill the children? And what we've said, is it possible? It could also have been that, though. Okay. But it's very likely what you're saying.
Shall I answer?
Just that one point.
All right, okay. It's
just a yes or no.
Okay. I have to say it's possible. I would say the probability is 1%.
Okay. So now you're saying it's possible.
Yes.
That it could be true.
Yes.
But 1%.
All right.
And that's why we have the Eastern Orthodox Church, because we have it written down with the eyewitnesses and the Holy Tradition brought down through the church.
First thing. Have you heard what I've just said to you before?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah. And have you heard what I said?
Yeah, you spoke at the Eastern Orthodox Church.
So let's leave it at that.
No, you tell me you heard about King Herod and all of this, and Josephus didn't write what he said.
Josephus, I know that certain...
No, I didn't say that. I said, did you know that he wrote about the atrocities of King Herod and that he didn't write about the census? Did you know that or not?
I didn't know that.
Right. So then you can...
I know something. Right. I've even got the book.
So is it possible? Is it possible Matthew lied?
It's possible, yeah.
Right. If Matthew lied, do you accept then that Matthew can't be authored by the Holy Spirit?
Yes, 100%.
Right. And therefore can't be relied upon as a source of information?
It's possible,
Fantastic.
Yes.
Go research it.
But I would say it's 0.1%.
Okay. That's just my...
So we need something other than the Bible and the Quran.
Okay. But understand one thing. Understand one thing, right? I have 10 points that do exactly the same thing to Matthew that I've just said to you. Yeah? I'll show you him inventing history again. I'll show you him corrupting the Old Testament. I'll show you making a prophecy that never even happened.
Exactly.
Right.
Because your man's interpretation,
not my man's.
2,000 years after,
not my man's.
looks at everything and then brings up all these stories to sell them.
No, not my man's.
But you have to go at the people alive at the time and the bishops that was passed down, written down. Right. And that's why we had the councils to protect.
Do you accept that if the Gospel of Matthew is...
Talk to the devil? Matthew.
Do you accept that if the author of Matthew has corrupted the Old Testament, took it out of context, invented prophecies, do you accept that's not reliable?
100%.
Alhamdulillah.
If there's any lies, if there's one word, one dot, if there's one dot that's wrong in the Bible, then I would...
What nonsense? What nonsense? What nonsense?
Who corrupted
What
the Bible?
nonsense?
Who corrupted
No,
the
what
Bible?
nonsense did I just say? No, what did I say that was just
Where's
nonsense?
your evidence?
No. What did you just say? What did you just say?
Where is your evidence? A straight
What did you just say?
It's a simple
What did I
question.
just say?
You said the Bible was corrupted.
You have to be respectful. The man
All right, you go. Okay.
I'm the right.
All right, let me just deal with him then. All right, take care. Always a pleasure, man. All right, take care. Yasu.
So what's your point? Are you saying the Bible's been corrupted?
Yeah, of course it has.
How are you talking about the Old Testament or the New Testament?
All of it.
So show me where it's been corrupted in the Old Testament.
How do you understand the term corruption?
Sorry?
How do you understand the term corrupted?
Well, you explain me. You're the one who said it, so you've got to explain what you mean.
No. But there's no point in me explaining something that you don't believe the definition of, is it? So how do you know what's corrupted?
How do I know if I believe it if I don't explain
All right. So if you want to tell me how you understand the word corrupted,
do you know that the Bible is the Old Testament, the Septuagint, is the true rendition of the Bible? Do you accept that?
What's that got to do with anything?
Does that accept? Do you
What's that got
accept
to do with anything?
Do you understand that the Hebrew was lost?
What's that got to do with
and do
anything?
you realise that
I'm assuming you're Greek, yes?
Yeah. Okay. That was the corruption that the
Eastern
Hebrew
Orthodox Church, yes?
retranslated
Eastern Orthodox
the Bible
Church, yeah?
that they'd lost
into
Hebrew, changing the words.
All right. Do you understand? Do you know what's in the Greek Orthodox Bible? Have you got an idea? Have you got it with you?
No, I haven't got it.
All right. Is Acts 8:37 in it or not?
Brother, this is just nonsense.
Why?
It's not going to give us salvation.
What?
It's just trying to prove that you're cleverer than anybody else.
Not at all.
So I'm asking you.
What does salvation have to do with whether a text is corrupted?
Prove
No. Okay. What does salvation have to do with a text being corrupted?
Prove I'm an academic.
No, you're here to preach. You're not here to be academic.
I'm trying to tell you the truth.
No, you're not. You're speaking emotionally. What are you talking about salvation for? What's that got to do with testing criticizing the text?
The whole point of life is to.
That's emotional. Where's your academia gone?
No, the whole point of life.
You came here as an academic.
Salvation.
You came here as an academic.
No, I came here.
Right. So we're criticizing a text.
I'm asking.
Right.
To show where
we're criticizing a text, and you're talking about salvation. What's that got to do with criticizing a text?
Because show me where it's been corrupted.
What's that got to do with salvation?
We're not getting anywhere, are we?
What's that got to do with salvation?
Are you Jewish?
No, I'm Muslim.
Well, you could be Jewish the way you're talking because you don't answer a question, or you answer a question with a question. So really, it's Jewish.
Well, you said you're academic and then went emotional.
I didn't say I'm academic.
Yeah, you did.
You
just
are
did.
making claims.
You just said you were an academic. You just said I'm an academic.
My friend was accepting what you were saying, and it's complete.
What did I say
rubbish.
to him? What did I say to him?
Your Quran.
What did I say to him?
Where are the lost?
What did I say to him? What did I say to him?
Where are the lost verses of the Quran, brothers? Where are the lost verses? Let's see if this brother here will show us the lost verses of the Quran.
What were the lost
Why
verses?
Don't you explain
Which lost verses? Which verses are missing?
The breastfeeding.
Which ones?
For the breast.
Which verse?
When Muhammad gave the edict, you have to give the breast to make somebody a relative so he can come.
And that was in the Quran?
That's in the Quran.
All right, okay.
That was in
First
the
thing,
Quran. Let me finish the sentence. Let me finish the sentence. Show respect.
You're coming from a false premise.
And then...
No, you just come from a false premise, though.
The sheep at these verses, but the Quran confirms that there were these verses.
Right.
But the verses are missing.
So let's understand one thing.
He doesn't want to answer it. He won't explain it.
All right.
No, because the foot, it's on the other foot now. Now I've proved him to show him that he's just choosing the Bible to attack because he's a hate preacher and he won't answer a legitimate question. Where are the lost verses of the Quran? Where are the lost verses of the Quran? It's a simple question.
All right. I've diagnosed your problem. All right.
It's not straight away insult. Ad hominem. Straight away he wants to attack me and not what I've said. When you're ready to tell me what's happened to the lost verses of the Quran, I'll come back and tell you.
Oh my idiot. Assalamu alaikum.
What he was teaching, methods.
Assalamu alaikum.
Picture of the other.
Yeah. Go on. That was funny, man. Just so you know, Mo Salah's took off his wig. Yeah, all right. All right, alhamdulillah. That was George Yorgos, Greek, obsessed with his Greek Orthodox Church, claimed to love God. He asked me, do I love God unconditionally? And the answer is no. I love God for what he does for me, alhamdulillah. Now, he said he loves God. Then I asked him a simple question: if you love God, you shouldn't ignore his messengers. And he conceded that, but then he says he doesn't believe Muhammad is a messenger. So, alhamdulillah, I allowed him to part that up. So let's see whether he believes what his messenger said, Jesus. So then I asked the question, how does he know what Jesus said? Then he goes to the New Testament. And then he was faffing about with the Gospels and such. And I asked a very simple question: why do you trust what the Gospels say? Why do you believe they're a reliable source of information? And he kept going to the Eastern Orthodox Church, because he's obsessed with it. But the reality here is this. I'm going to make the claim again. The Christians, their belief is based on 3 false assumptions, and as soon as they get this into their minds, they'll start thinking for themselves. 1, there is no way were the authors of the Gospels disciples of Jesus. 2, nor were they eyewitnesses. 3, nor is it any divine Holy Spirit inspiration. And if these 3 are true and false assumptions, what do you stand on? Why do you believe what you believe is true? So that was Yorgos. And then, I don't know, this crazy mate came along, thought he heard something, said he was academic, started talking about salvation. But the reality here is this: they asked us questions about the Quran. And even then, I said I diagnosed his problem. What was his problem? Well, his paradigm was incorrect. Because he said, Muhammad said this in the Quran. Now, we Muslims, we don't believe Muhammad is the author of the Quran. So we don't believe Muhammad said this in the Quran. So as soon as you start with that, you're on a false premise initially. Second thing he said, a sheep ate a verse of the Quran. All right, subhanallah din. All right. First of all, it was a goat. Second thing, do you truly believe that if a goat eats a parchment with some writing on it, everybody who heard that revelation forgot it? Come on, man. You Christians are nuts. I don't know what you're clinging on to. I challenge any Christian. You bring me a Tarawih that had a different Tarawih. Show me this verses that were added in the Tarawih which are not in it now. Please. Don't tell us, the alif, this, that, the other. Show me a verse that is not in the Quran. Subhanallah. Assalamu alaikum.